good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. It's breakfast somewhere, so eat up. Welcome to Breakfast with Vinnie, episode number 2. Who are you? Who are you? Who am I? Who are we? Okay. Should say, who are we? Applies to everybody equally. I could have subtitled it something like identity and learning, any number of things, but just for lack of a better title, who are you? Anyway, I did this one on the fly, hence the street noise and airplanes overhead, so it'll sound a bit different. So here you go. Once I was at a friend's house doing a rehearsal, and I saw a man there sitting on the piano bench with a young lady who was a pianist. And I said to my friend, are we interrupting anything? And he said, no, we'll go in the other room. That's my friend. He's giving a piano lesson. And I said, oh, that's great. Who is he? Turns out that he was a celebrated teacher of pianists and violinists. And he was neither a pianist nor a violinist, but he was one of the most sought-after teachers by celebrated pianists and violinists. So what does that tell you about teaching, about the role of teaching, about the concept of teaching, the process of teaching, the process and role of learning, student-teacher interaction, the integration of learning, the recognition of self and learning and self inside the process of learning, when the teacher doesn't play your instrument. It speaks volumes, actually. In a similar manner, one of the times I had a huge epiphany was when I went to New York to take lessons with a very famous drummer who was very funky. So I went there with a couple of friends of mine, and the first thing that happened, the group lesson that we took was quite long. And he told us about how to mic the drums and told us not to argue with the engineer and all kinds of things. And then he sat down and he told each one of us to play a rudimental solo, one after the other. So we each sat down and played what we thought was a rudimental solo. And then he said, okay, I want each of you to sit down now and play me a groove. So each of us in turn sat down and played a groove, what we thought was a groove. And then you can guess what happens next. He sat down and played a groove in capital letters, and I was standing right behind him. And at that moment, I got hit with a lightning bolt of realization that you cannot teach this. You just can't. And I believe that I, quote, got it, unquote. One of my friends said, well, let me just backtrack a minute. He said, okay, I want you all to come back next week, write an essay, and come back next week and tell me what you've learned. And we were standing out in front of the street, and one of my friends said, I'm going to write my essay and come back next week. And I just, without batting an eyelid, I just quickly said, I'm not. And my friend said, why? And I said, I got everything I needed to know right now. And that was the end of that. You just can't. You either get funk or you don't. It's really that simple. And I think that people who naturally understand it just grow up in that culture where it exists. Let's just say indigenous cultures where that happens all the time. You see little kids in Brazil just playing rhythms on everything because that's just part of their culture. In Africa, they do it. It's just part of their culture. They do it all the time. And they're exposed to it and they just do it. It's like as if, well, they're going to watch somebody swim and then they get in the water and they teach them how to swim, or they watch somebody ride a bike and somebody helps them do that, or they just imitate somebody playing a drum, and they hear it and they just watch the person and they just do it and they integrate it. It's almost like learning a language. And it's just one of those things where that's all they do. They can't sit there and somehow impart on a printed page or any other kind of medium what it means to be funky and in such a way that they can just inject it into your system and suddenly make you be able to be funky. That's just one of those things. It's almost like transcribing an Elvin Jones drum solo. That to me it's like Mission Impossible. I don't even think it's meant to be transcribed. So, so much for broad strokes versus minutia. And it just goes back to my whole sort of overview that concept and context are pretty much everything. Everything follows from that. It comes down from the bigger picture, because then things fall into place with a reason to be and a reason to fall into place, because you kind of know what it is that you're after. And when you're trying to learn to execute, then you will learn how to execute based on what it is that you're trying to get out. And I'm not just talking about vocabulary. I'm just talking about a bigger how you're trying to say it. Whoever you are, because wherever you go, there you are. And that's the name of that tune. That's just the way it is. You can run, but you can't hide. And so it's kind of like keep running and running and running and running from the one thing, which is yourself. And especially now in an age of homogeneity, okay, why? I mean, I think we all get caught up in modeling. I certainly did. But at the end of the day, you just have to be yourself. Because we're all different. We all express ourselves differently. I could sit and listen to 5 different records with 5 different drummers on it playing the same simple groove, and I could tell you exactly who it was in 2 beats or less. Seriously. And that's pretty amazing when you think about, and I've probably said this before, you've probably heard me say this before, when you talk about people playing an idiophone, with short durations of time. Not every part of the drum kit has short durations in time, but if you're playing a groove, kick, snare, and hi-hat is pretty pointed, usually, in a general sense. Let's not open this up for any kind of argument. You get my drift. And so you now have all these different people playing the same beat with the same amount of theoretical space, but I can hear who they are. And I think that, homogeneity is just sort of part and parcel of the sort of McWorld that we're in now. We're in McWorld. We're in this homogenized kind of, corporate sort of brand-oriented sameness. And it doesn't always lend itself to that. So then that's, who are you? So that's the who are you part, which I think all of us at some point need to examine. And that's why I tell people, I say, what's the biggest piece of advice? Just be yourself. Be yourself. And they think, oh, well, that's just too simplistic. No, it's not. Just try doing it. I had to let go. It drove me berserk trying to find and make that up and try to sort of invent something. And I thought, well, I'm just conjuring something again. It's not me. Let me emerge. And so I stopped trying. I got out of the way. I just stepped aside, stepped out of my own way, And it happened. And I didn't even know what it was, but I didn't even think about it because, again, I had to stay out of the way. I had to get out of there. And that was what I think really, really helped me to achieve that, to just be that. There's a lot of things that can be in your way, a lot of issues, could be baggage, could be a lot of numbers of things. You just have to look at and say, well, what's inhibiting me from being myself? You know, what am I bringing to this? If I were to sit down with somebody, I may ask them any number of things, like, what is it that you want to do in your playing? What is it? How do you want to play? Why do you want to do it? Well, because I like it. Well, I want to sound like this guy and that guy, because in their mind, everyone else is always better. And so therefore, even though they say they want to do that, they may not sincerely really want to do it. They just might want to do it because they think it's better than anything that they could possibly offer themselves. They think that just because this guy's popular or that person's popular, it must be better, qualitatively better. Therefore, that's why I want to do it. And so sometimes they resist it. And then they wonder why they're not improving and they're sabotaging themselves, because really, they really don't want to do that. They just think they have to because everybody else is doing it, instead of letting themselves emerge, trusting that. You know, that might be one of the issues. And another thing I might say is, look, man, do you feel loved? Because if they're sabotaging themselves and they think everyone else is better than them and they're just constantly looking for approval from other people, then what do they think of themselves? So these are things that I think are really at the root of it. And they're not only at the root, they're really the fundamental things, again, from which all those other things will spring forth. Hence concept, hence context. And there you go. Who are you? Thanks for listening.
Stay tuned for the next episode of Breakfast with Vinnie.